The story begins in Osaka, Japan, inside a Yakuza headquarters where the ruthless crime boss Oda Bun is preparing to punish three of his men for failing a mission. Even though he gives them one chance to stay alive and assigns them a new task, failure is still failure in the Yakuza world. Before they can continue, each of them is ordered to cut off their own pinky finger as punishment. One of the men, Genki, gathers the courage to slice off his finger and earns himself another opportunity. Another long-haired Yakuza member steps forward next, but at the last second, he loses his nerve. The moment Oda Bun sees his hesitation, he completely loses his patience. Instead of losing just a finger, the man ends up losing his head. The story then shifts all the way to Minnesota, to a quiet little town called Normal. Here we meet a man named Ulysses, who has recently arrived from the city after being chosen as the temporary sheriff for the next 8 weeks. A deputy named Mike picks him up from a motel, and during the drive, Ulysses quietly opens up about his troubled marriage. Every time he calls his wife, she refuses to answer, making it painfully obvious that things between them are falling apart. When Ulysses arrives at the station, he is welcomed by another deputy named Blaine, a man who plans to run for sheriff once Ulysses finishes his temporary assignment. Life in this town is unbelievably peaceful. The biggest problems they ever deal with are usually arguments between neighbors over parking spaces. This town is called Normal. Apparently, the previous sheriff, Anthony Ganderson, died from a heart attack caused by the freezing weather. At least, that is the official story. According to everyone in town, there was nothing suspicious about his death at all. Inside the station's armory, Ulysses discovers a pistol that Ganderson never got the chance to give to his daughter. And even though this town is supposed to be harmless, Ulysses cannot help noticing how heavily armed the station really is. Later that night, he stops by a restaurant owned by a woman named Ernie. Strangely enough, loaded rifles are casually displayed on the walls like decorations. But considering how calm the town seems, Ulysses does not think much of it. Still, no matter how peaceful this place looks on the surface, something continues to haunt him every single night. A traumatic incident from his past keeps returning in his nightmares, refusing to let him rest. The next morning, Ulysses is startled when he discovers a strange red liquid outside his motel room. For a moment, he thinks something terrible has happened, but his worries disappear once he realizes a deer has been running around after stealing red paint. Later, Ulysses breaks up an argument inside a hardware store owned by a man named Maynard. During the visit, he notices a heavily secured cabinet that immediately catches his attention. But according to Maynard, it only contains equipment for cutting down trees. Not long after that, an elderly woman named Mary practically drags Ulysses into her yarn shop. She starts complaining about a thread order that was not delivered the way she wanted. But while listening to her rambling, Ulysses discovers something strange. Mary has been secretly listening to police radio communications. Apparently, she does it simply because she feels lonely. Afterward, Ulysses visits the Ganderson family home, where a memorial is being held for the late Sheriff Ganderson. There, he meets the doctor who signed the sheriff's death certificate. According to the doctor, Ganderson went fishing on a frozen river while heavily drunk and wearing nothing but shorts. The freezing conditions supposedly triggered a heart attack and left him to die in the cold. At the memorial, Mayor Kibner also welcomes Ulysses to town and even offers him the chance to become the permanent sheriff. He likes the way Ulysses handles small problems with patience instead of overreacting. But their conversation is suddenly interrupted by a commotion outside. It turns out the trouble is being caused by Alex, Ganderson's daughter, who is clearly unwelcome in her own home. That night, Ulysses heads to a local bar where he meets the owner, Moira. She thanks him for letting her off easy earlier that day after she parked illegally, since Ulysses chose not to give her a ticket. As the night goes on, the two begin opening up to each other. Ulysses talks about the collapse of his marriage and finally reveals the traumatic incident that has been haunting him all this time. In the past, he was forced to shoot the daughter of a powerful official after she murdered her own abusive father with a gunshot to the head. That moment completely shattered Ulysses emotionally. It left him lost, damaged his marriage, and ultimately pushed him toward this quiet little town in Minnesota. Unfortunately, the nightmare follows him into the next morning once again. Before heading to work, Ulysses notices a woman named Lori struggling with a vending machine. But judging from her behavior, and from the way her husband Keith acts nearby, it is obvious the two of them did not come to Normal for innocent reasons. Later that night, just before heading back to his motel, Ulysses finds Alex drunk and wandering around alone. Feeling sorry for her, he decides to stay and keep her company for a while. During their conversation, Alex reveals that her father was once incredibly proud when she joined the military. But strangely, not long after that, almost everyone in town suddenly began hating their family for reasons she still does not understand. According to Alex, the pressure put Ganderson in a terrible position, and deep down she is convinced someone from Normal murdered her father. Since Alex has nowhere safe or warm to go, Ulysses brings her back to the station. Ironically, the jail cell that usually feels like hell for criminals becomes the only comfortable place she can spend the night. As for Ulysses, despite all the baggage he brought with him, he slowly starts feeling like this small town may not be such a bad place to settle down after all. But the next morning, everything changes. An alarm suddenly goes off at the police station, and it turns out Lori and Keith are attempting to rob the local bank without properly planning anything beforehand. Among the bank's security staff is Genki, which immediately raises questions about why a Yakuza member would be working security in a tiny town like this. Things quickly spiral out of control when one of the customers suffers a heart attack from the shock of the robbery. Surprisingly, Lori and Keith immediately stop what they are doing to save the man's life. But while everyone is distracted, Genki secretly uses the opportunity to send a warning signal back to the Yakuza headquarters in Japan. That is when it becomes clear that Genki's presence in this town is actually part of the mission Oda assigned him earlier. Not long after, Genki takes advantage of the chaos and suddenly stabs Keith, forcing Lori to fire her gun. Moments later, Ulysses arrives at the scene alongside Blaine and Mike, and he instantly recognizes Lori and Keith as the robbers. But after spotting Lori's dog sitting inside the getaway car, Ulysses chooses to handle the situation calmly instead of aggressively. Rather than escalating things, he tries to talk Lori down and peacefully resolve the mess before anyone else gets hurt. However, just as Ulysses approaches the bank entrance, Blaine receives a mysterious phone call giving him direct orders. The moment Ulysses moves toward the door, Blaine and Mike suddenly open fire on the bank without hesitation, even though innocent civilians and Ulysses himself are still inside the line of fire. With no other choice, Ulysses fires back, blowing off part of Blaine's ear in the process. Realizing something is seriously wrong, Ulysses demands answers from the bank manager. Instead of explaining, the manager tells them to look inside the vault. What they find completely shocks everyone. Inside the vault are huge piles of gold and cash, along with stacks of smuggled weapons hidden beneath the bank. At that moment, Ulysses realizes this quiet little town is hiding something far bigger than anyone could have imagined. But before they can fully process what they are seeing, the nervous bank manager suddenly grabs a gun from his desk drawer. In his panic, he trips and accidentally shoots himself before he can fire at Ulysses. Once things calm down a little, Lori and Keith finally realize something disturbing. The deputies outside have not really been trying to stop the robbery at all. Instead, they have been aiming directly at Ulysses the entire time. Even though Lori and Keith are obviously the actual bank robbers, Ulysses himself does not even know how to respond to that realization. Then a phone call finally reveals the truth behind everything. On the other end of the line is Mayor Kibner, and it turns out he was the one who ordered Blaine to kill Ulysses before he could discover what was hidden inside the vault. That is when the entire conspiracy comes to light. For years, the Yakuza have been storing their profits in this bank while running operations across America. In exchange for a share of the money, every citizen in the town of Normal agreed to protect the secret. The mayor even admits that he once massacred townspeople who refused to cooperate with the arrangement. After revealing everything, Kibner offers Ulysses a place beside them. He promises him wealth and power, but only if Ulysses is willing to kill Lori and Keith right there on the spot. And if he refuses, then the entire town will turn against him. But instead of backing down, Ulysses refuses to join a community of psychopaths corrupted by Yakuza money. The moment the mayor hears his answer, he immediately orders the townspeople to open fire. Luckily, a deer suddenly distracts everyone for a split second, giving Ulysses the chance he needs to prepare a counterattack. After escaping the shootout, Ulysses brings Lori and Keith to Mary's shop for shelter. Meanwhile, Genki orders the entire town to hunt Ulysses down before Oda and the Yakuza arrive from Japan. But even there, Ulysses quickly realizes he still cannot trust anyone. Mary suddenly appears with a shotgun in her hands, revealing that she is just as corrupt as the rest of the town. Ulysses, Lori, and Keith panic immediately. But through teamwork and quick thinking, Lori manages to kill Mary before she can shoot them. After surviving the ambush, Ulysses decides to take Lori and Keith back to the police station. He remembers there is a snow tractor there and believes it could be their only way out of town. Unfortunately, escaping is nowhere near that simple. The ongoing gunfight forces Ulysses into a brutal confrontation with Maynard. The hardware store owner proves to be surprisingly dangerous and nearly overwhelms him. But in the middle of the fight, Ulysses sprays insecticide directly into Maynard's eyes, giving him the opening he needs to finally take him down. Outside the store, Laurie and Keith try hiding from one of the townspeople hunting them down. Keith attempts to fight back using one of the gold bars he stole from the bank vault, but in the end, it barely helps. Luckily for them, a stray gunshot suddenly takes out their attacker and saves their lives. Meanwhile, more and more townspeople begin surrounding the hardware store where Ulysses is trapped. But while searching the place, Ulysses discovers that Maynard had been secretly hiding sticks of dynamite inside the double-locked cabinet all along. The move is reckless but bold. Mike manages to extinguish the fuse before the dynamite can fully burn down. Yet seconds later, the explosives still detonate and send everyone flying in every direction. At the same time, Laurie and Keith finally arrive at the police station and locate the snow tractor Ulysses mentioned earlier. But without realizing it, a woman armed with a shotgun quietly sneaks up behind them. Thankfully, Ulysses arrives at the perfect moment and brutally kills her before she can pull the trigger. Afterward, Ulysses tells Laurie and Keith to leave town immediately. He even allows them to keep the gold bar Keith stole from the bank so they can use it to start a new life somewhere else. As for Ulysses, he is finally tired of running away from every problem in his life. This time, things are different. Instead of escaping, he chooses to stay and face whatever is coming, even if it means standing against the entire town by himself. Once Laurie and Keith flee, Genki quickly realizes that Ulysses must be hiding at the police station. He immediately orders the remaining townspeople to surround the building. But before they can launch their attack, Ulysses suddenly comes face to face with Moira. Without hesitation, she opens fire on him. Thankfully, Ulysses survives because of his bulletproof vest, but the shots still knock him to the ground right in front of her. Surprisingly, instead of killing him immediately, Moira decides to confront Ulysses about the dark incident from his past. That is when the truth finally comes out. It turns out Ulysses was the one who killed the abusive politician from years ago. After the man violently mistreated his own daughter, Ulysses took justice into his own hands and shot him dead himself. Whatever happened to the daughter afterward remains unknown, but Ulysses openly admits that the shooting was his personal version of justice. Then Moira reveals an even darker secret. She confesses that she was the one who murdered Sheriff Ganderson. According to her, Ganderson wanted to leave the town for good after Alex joined the military. But because the town needed to keep its Yakuza operation hidden at all costs, Moira decided she had no choice but to silence him forever. After confessing the truth about Ganderson's death, Moira prepares to kill Ulysses right then and there. But unknown to her, Alex has been quietly waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The second the opportunity appears, Alex opens fire and kills Moira before she can finish Ulysses off. With all the secrets finally exposed, Ulysses officially makes Alex his new deputy and immediately gives her an important mission. He orders her to head straight to the bank where the Yakuza's fortune is being stored. Without hesitation, Alex jumps into her truck and plows through anyone standing in her way. At the same time, Ulysses realizes he still has one advantage left. He knows the Yakuza will massacre the entire town if they discover their money was not protected properly. Using that fear against them, Ulysses comes up with a desperate plan to trick the Yakuza before they arrive. He makes it clear that if the townspeople refuse to cooperate, Alex will blow up every piece of Yakuza wealth currently sitting unguarded inside the bank. So not long after that, Ulysses stands face to face with Genki and the surviving townspeople, calmly laying out his proposal. In the end, they have no real choice but to accept. Together, they agree to fake an accident in order to calm Odabun's suspicions. The plan is simple. They will stage a normal accident near the bank, while Genki claims the emergency alarm was triggered accidentally during the chaos. At the same time, the townspeople begin covering up all traces of the massacre that happened earlier, trying to make the town of Normal look peaceful once again, just like its name suggests. Not long afterward, Odabun and his men finally arrive in town. Ulysses and Blaine greet them, while pretending to know nothing about the arrangement between the Yakuza and the citizens of Normal. As the Yakuza convoy pulls in, Ulysses confidently bets Blaine $100 that his plan is actually going to work. To avoid suspicion, Blaine introduces Odabun to Ulysses, as if he were a priest visiting town to inspect the valuables stored at the local bank. Playing along perfectly, Ulysses personally escorts the fake priest to the bank himself. Once inside, Genki explains that the town's communication lines were cut off because of the snowstorm, which supposedly prevented him from confirming the accidental alarm signal sent earlier. And when Oda Buns sees that almost all of his money and gold are still untouched, it begins to look like Ulysses may have actually fooled him. Not long after that, the townspeople bring the entire Yakuza group to Ernie's restaurant to welcome their important guests from Japan. The gathering also gives Blaine the perfect chance to introduce himself as the future sheriff who plans to continue the town's partnership with the Yakuza. To celebrate the occasion, Ernie opens a bottle of liquor. But in an unbelievable twist of bad luck, the bottle cap suddenly flies across the room and accidentally knocks down a loaded rifle hanging on the restaurant wall. The gun fires instantly, blowing Odabun's head apart on the spot. The restaurant erupts into chaos as Odabun's men begin screaming in panic, while the music suddenly changes in the background. At that moment, everyone realizes the situation is about to spiral completely out of control. A massive shootout immediately breaks out across the restaurant. Bullets start flying everywhere as the entire place turns into a battlefield. During the chaos, Ulysses drags Genki into the kitchen, where the two finally settle things in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Meanwhile, Alex desperately tries to survive the non-stop gunfire tearing through the restaurant. And by the time the violence finally ends, only Alex and Blaine are left standing. After everything they have been through, Ulysses, Alex, and Blaine decide to put the conflict behind them. Instead of fighting anymore, they simply sit down together and enjoy a pie Ulysses finds in the kitchen. Ulysses also keeps his promise by paying Blaine the $100 from their earlier bet before officially handing over the sheriff position to him. 1 month later, Blaine is fully settled into his new role as sheriff of Normal. As for Ulysses, he has moved on to another small town in Texas, where he continues working as a sheriff with Alex now serving as his deputy. And just like always, Ulysses leaves another voice message for his wife, updating her about his life even though she never answers. But this time, something finally changes. After all this time, it seems his wife is finally ready to pick up the phone, bringing the story to an end. So the moral of the story is never trust a town called Normal. When the grandma spies on police radios, the hardware store hides dynamite, and the restaurant decorations can accidentally assassinate a Yakuza boss.